Hello and welcome to Your Best Interviews. My name is Eric Smith. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. I know there's a lot of places you could go, so I appreciate you spending the time with me. If this is helpful, please share with others. My goal is to help as many people as possible while they're preparing for interviews. So today what I want to talk about is behavioral-based interview questions and chameleon stories. So I call them chameleon stories. It's really just stories that are kind of in your bag that you can utilize for behavioral-based interview questions. So there's a long list of behavioral-based interview questions that you can get prepared for and really practice. But what I like to do is, when I think about behavioral-based interview questions, or when I think about interviews in general, what I tend to look at is how much time do you have in that interview time slot with that hiring manager, right? If it's 30 minutes, you know that there's only so many questions that they can ask you within that time frame, right? There's small talk, there's tell me about yourself, there's, walk me through your resume or tell me about your experiences. You're going to have kind of those back and forth. And then at the end of the interview, they're going to leave time for you to ask questions, better understand the role. And so, a lot of people go in thinking, they're going to ask me 25 different questions. That's just not going to happen. From a time standpoint, that's really not realistic. And so likely when you go into these situations, to put your mind at ease, you're commonly going to be asked maybe 3 to 5 questions from a behavioral-based interview question standpoint. And so when I say come up with chameleon stories, what I'm referring to is not make up stories, right, that you can kind of mold around. What I'm saying is what you should be doing is preparing stories that have actually happened to you in your experience and in your past that you can utilize for a lot of different questions, right? So an example of this would be, tell me about a time that you worked with a challenging person, right? You might reflect back to a time working on a team on a new project, and there was a person on that project that was just really difficult to work with. You can take that story and use that as, tell me about a time you worked with a difficult person. You could also use that same story, that same scenario about tell me about a time that you worked on something that was challenging for you. Or tell me about a time that you made a mistake. Maybe there was a mistake that you made within that project, within working with that challenging person, right? So it's one story, but there's a lot of different ways and avenues that you could use that story to your benefit to answer behavioral-based questions. What you want to try and avoid is using the same story for all their questions within that time frame or within that interview time. And so what I try and say is always have 3, 4, if you can, 5 chameleon stories ready to go, because again, they're limited in what they can ask you within that time frame before time is up. So have these stories on hand and ready. It just makes it easier for you to recall. The last thing you want to do is be in an interview and have someone say, tell me about a time that you experienced conflict at work, and you're like, you blank in the meeting. You're like, oh man, should I use this story? Should I not use this story? Does this story make me look bad? There's a lot of things to think through, right? You don't want to necessarily share a story that could reflect poorly on you, or maybe you're dogging on someone, or you're saying maybe the company was unorganized in the way they rolled something out. It could reflect poorly on how you're disparaging your last company. And so these are things you don't want to do in the moment, and how to avoid that is to prepare these stories ahead of time. So yeah, I call them chameleon stories, and I say they're chameleon stories because they've got a lot of different elements within the same situation, right? The overall situation is the same, but you could use it to say, I worked with a difficult person within this situation, or I had to learn a new task, and here's exactly what I did to learn this new task and thrive, and here are the results that occurred because of it. It could be I had to overcome a challenge. I messed up and had to fess up to it. All these are behavioral-based questions, but it all fits into one bucket or one story that I can use, right? So my recall is really quick, and I can just mold the story to that particular element within the story. So that's why I call it a chameleon story, because again, you can use it for a lot of different pieces, and you can kind of shape and mold it to what the question is being, or to the question that is being asked of you. But yeah, so again, prep behavioral-based questions. Look at the list of potential behavioral-based questions. You can go anywhere. Check my website first, obviously, but there's a lot of places you can go to see behavioral-based interview questions. So get a good handle on what could be asked, right? And then start writing out your chameleon stories, and write out 10 if you can, but then find the 3 to 5 that maybe are your best that you can use and mold to the most situations. Again, don't lie on this because it's easy to get caught. If you're lying, it's really easy to forget details or to miss details, and all of a sudden your integrity is gone and that job opportunity is gone. So don't lie, but think about the stories and your actual experiences and how you can use those real experiences and just focus in on the different elements within those stories that get to the behavioral-based question that's being asked of you. That's a chameleon story. That's how you want to prepare for these. Again, the whole point is just to have these in your head so that the recall is strong, so you're not getting stumped, and that you can plainly lay out the STAR method for your chameleon stories, and you sound concise, and that they fit and that they're strong answers. Again, everything that I'm telling you is to give you the greatest chances of moving forward in the process, right? Behavioral-based questions can trip people up, but if you prepare properly, if you have your chameleon stories ready to go and you've practiced the STAR method on all of them, and you've ran through 20, 30 different behavioral questions with your chameleon stories using the STAR method, you're in a way better position than majority of the people that you're going to be interviewing against for that role. So good luck. Come up with your chameleon stories, practice them on a wide range of behavioral-based questions, and you'll be in great shape to answer when the interview time comes. Good luck.